cutting out those jobs, a huge percentage of those people, and I know you care about the veterans, are veterans.
Yes.
And that is a damn shame.
Yes. Yeah.
That is a damn shame.
I'm not a Democrat, but I'm worried about the veterans, man.
All right. Well, I yielded to one of my elders, and I appreciate his comments. I think it's a great. I'm not gonna. We don't have time for everyone to stand up. I do got 2 more commitments today. Appreciate everybody making the drive out, and God bless America. Thank you.
You're not
We're gonna take pictures with you, buddy, right?
We're going to vote you out. That was Senator Roger Marshall of Kansas fleeing his own town hall. You know, I just watched Top Gun Maverick the other day with my son. He hadn't seen it yet. And honest to God, it almost like somebody in his earpiece said, eject, eject. He ran away. And that is just what's going on across the country as Republican members of Congress and the Senate face their own constituents in having town halls. I guess they could take a cue from people like my Representative Ann Wagner, and not have a town hall in 12 years. Or a lot of them who are going to tele-town halls, they plant 4 questions and then run away as well. But the fact is, there is rising anger at the Republicans as they face the reality and the fallout of what's happening in Washington, D.C. and across the globe, because we're doing things like cutting the tuberculosis program, a tuberculosis program that they thought once again was a USAID waste of money, was actually the funding for the entire world's TB treatments and management. So we're going to bring out some old-timey diseases, like we got measles. First people to die in 10 years in America died this last week of measles, okay, a disease that was essentially eradicated in the United States. Then we've got, which RFK Jr. just dismissed as, we have measles outbreaks every year, which is a fucking lie. On top of that, we've got all these other things going on. There's just so much going on, and it is going to get worse. I'd love to have you positive, but we've got a great show to talk about every Sunday. Our diehards are here. We love seeing you guys. Welcome to the show. Of course, I am Fred Wellman. I am the host right here of On Democracy Sunday, as well as On Democracy with FPWellman. You've joined us, hopefully, on either my social media channels or On Democracy's YouTube channel. I hope you'll take a moment to go to our YouTube channel, hit like, hit thanks, hit share, hit subscribe, so we can grow our growing community, as well as on our Substack channel. We're doing a lot more on fpwellman.substack.com. But now let's get on with the show. We have got great guests, I mentioned. Amazing folks. Simon Rosenberg, author of the Hopium Chronicles and a good friend I've had the opportunity to spend some quality time with. We've got Representative Ami Bera of California, one of the few handful of physicians in Congress, is going to join us later. I had a chance to sit down with him on Friday for the show. Our panel is amazing. You may remember Mark McEwen from CBS This Morning. Mark's been on a journey of his own these last few years as he suffered from a stroke and has been a health advocate in addition to being a journalist. But we can be able to talk about the Oscars a little bit with him. And then, of course, on the panel, my friend Alex Vindman, who we're going to see is as fun as he thinks he is. It's going to be interesting to see how it goes. So a lot to talk about. Let's get on. Let's go ahead and get on with the news this morning. It's just a crazy time. Well, the big story, of course, you had to be sleeping under a rock, I think, if you missed the meeting on Friday with President Zelensky of Ukraine and in that Oval Office with Trump, Rubio, and, of course, attack dog J.D. Vance. Unlike Saturday Night Live, Elon Musk did not show up for that meeting, although some people thought he did. I'm kind of surprised Elon Musk didn't show up for that meeting, but he didn't. It was a trap. Okay, let's not mince words. My friends here at the New York Times, of course, are sort of saying it appears it may have been, it could have been a trap, though people deny it. It was a trap. That was a setup. I mean, the fact that the presence of the friendly media to back the narrative they're going to spin, the immediate flow of nearly identical talking points from across Republican propaganda ecosphere continues today. I feel like it was a setup, but, let's go ahead and pretend it wasn't. There's been some interesting reporting here in the New York Times and others about what went on before the meeting, what went on in the meeting, and what were the goals of this one. It's the biggest toadies on the right are even saying, Senator Lindsey Graham. Now, this is really interesting because Lindsey Graham met with a group, I believe it was a group of a dozen senators, met with President Zelensky at the Hay Adams Hotel. If you're familiar with D.C., that's right across from the west entrance of the White House. And they met with Zelensky, and it was a very positive meeting. It was bipartisan. And they said positive things. Graham's telling everybody now that he cautioned Zelensky not to take, quote, Trump's bait and to be ready. Now, why would he caution Zelensky not to take the bait of Trump unless he knew there was going to be bait. I mean, you don't tell somebody to worry about fishermen unless there's probably a fisherman, right? But that's what he did. Now Trump, now he's saying that he wish. What did Trump? I think he actually said they should send somebody else. They appeared with them. Senator Richard Blumenthal was there. He said the meeting was very productive. But when Zelensky arrived at the White House, as soon as he walked in, Trump greeted him at the entrance to the West Wing and made a crack about his casual outfit. Trump said, "Oh, look, you're all dressed up." Mr. Trump said that as an early signal how this was going to go. He really annoys him that Mr. Zelensky doesn't wear a suit to meetings. Zelensky, of course, has said multiple times that he wears his uniform unadorned to bond with his soldiers that are fighting wars. That's what he wears at official events. Trump advanced or adversaries have long disliked Zelensky. Let's not pretend otherwise. They've always complained he just wants the United States to provide more money and more resources for the war, and they see it never ending. Of course, Trump in recent days has tried to really shield Vladimir Putin, the Russian president, from criticism for instigating the conflict at all. That was led to the other day where we actually voted with Russia at the UN, which is a shocking turn of events for people like me who happened to serve during the Cold War. I went into the army under President Ronald Reagan, for goodness sake, and here we are at the UN signing with Russia and Belarus and North Korea, a shocking turn. But as the two leaders sat down without any cameras, the exchange was supposedly cordial, according to one of the people with knowledge. Reporters then showed up, and as soon as the reporters showed up, the energy of the room shifted completely. Now, look, you can make believe that's an accident because they were there or Trump's before the cameras. But again, I have a hard time believing that. Within 8 minutes of the meeting, journalists started peppering with questions. Of course, Marjorie Taylor Greene's boyfriend, Brian Glenn, of course, asked why Zelensky refused to wear a suit. Oddly, he never asked that of Elon Musk, who wears hats inside the Oval Office. But Zelensky is required to wear a suit for His Highness. Things went off the rails in a really big way when reporters started peppering Trump himself, too, about asking about security gantries. And when Zelensky answered about the country's mineral wealth, things went nuts when J.D. Vance decided to weigh in and chastise Zelensky for not being thankful enough. It was kind of funny, and I won't show it, but CNN did a great reel for Marco Rubio of all the dozens of times over and over that Zelensky has thanked the people of the United States for their support. But it's never good enough because you have to thank Trump immediately within 5 minutes of meeting him, how wonderful he is. You know, after everything got stupid, we saw the messaging come out. And that's where it got really weird. Like Senator Roger Wicker of Mississippi, who said, and I can't believe it, a U.S. senator said that Zelensky should resign and send somebody over that we can do business with or change. He had actually met with Zelensky as a show of support, but Wicker took down a picture his team had posted of him shaking hands with Zelensky. Immediately, they called out Republicans from across country. My own governor, Mike Kehoe, the governor of Missouri, put out a statement saying how manly and how virile that Trump was by showing what a tough guy is. We had drunk Ronnie Jackson in Florida on vacation, apparently doing a selfie video on a balcony, barely being able to get his words out and his anger about Zelensky being disrespectful. Clearly a coordinated messaging campaign. What's fascinating, though, of course, is Europe didn't get the message. Zelensky flew right off to Europe and was welcomed with open arms by the British. I mean, look, folks, President Erdogan of Turkey posted on social media showing him a picture of him holding an umbrella over Zelensky's head, saying, "This is how we welcome guests in Turkey." When we got dictators criticizing us, you know how things are going. But the good news is the Russians are thrilled. So Trump's friends and neighbors are supporting him. We're going to see a lot from this. We'll probably talk about it more during our conversations with our guests today. But that story is still going on. It'll be very interesting. It has shocked Europe, and the world order is changing very rapidly in just 6 weeks. And our second story I'm going to talk about briefly before we welcome the amazing Simon Rosenberg is Wired. Now, I'm going to recommend first, I do this often, folks, but we have to recommend Wired. Wired has been on the story of DOGE and what's going on inside the government like a beast since it started. If you aren't subscribing to Wired right now, their editor came in and said there's going to be, when she saw Elon Musk involvement, she saw that it was going to be a tech bro crossing into government moment and prepared for it. And they are prepared for the moment and doing some incredible reporting. This story was a little bit discouraging, and I won't go into great depth, but basically the theme of the story that they just put out is that, look, it's going to get much, much worse. DOGE is hard to keep track of, and that's by design. The information outside the group, it has only put out, it's like its own mistake-leading, just completely mistaken-ridden ledger. Their savings that have come out that they had to retract and replace because over half the savings were wrong, that the numbers were wrong. wrong. They counted one contract 4 times, but they're going fast and breaking things. And that's the goal, is to keep us moving, right? You may be aware already of the 19-year-old called Big Balls. He was portrayed on Saturday Night Live last night, but you may have missed that a guy named Edward Corsney has since been installed at the nation's top cybersecurity group and the State Department and the Small Business Administration, and he has a Department of Homeland Security email address. By the way, he's also been posting all of his work on Discord about what he's doing, and he was saying AI Discord bots to Russians as recently as a year ago. A guy who was selling AI bot for Discord to Russia is now in our cybersecurity agency. You've heard that USAID, of course, has been gutted. CFPB, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, has been gutted, put on ice. Perfect for someone who wants to use his social network to sell crypto and stuff. Thousands of so-called probationary employees have been fired. The National Science Foundation is staffing cuts. National Institute of Health have stopped their grants and combined to kneecap scientific research in the United States. The termination at the U.S. Department of Agriculture has sent programs designed to help farmers into disarray. You may have seen the TikTok from a Missouri farmer who voted for Trump, saying he couldn't get money. His farm was going to fail because of these grant cuts. On Wednesday, the Food and Drug Administration, a shocking turn, canceled a meeting that would have given guidance on this year's flu vaccine composition. It's yet to be rescheduled. So this key meeting that occurs this time of year every year, where scientists come together to talk about what flu we should expect and what to mix in the vaccine, because every year it's different, was canceled with no rescheduled date. Social Security Administration is reportedly going to cut half of its staff, and already there's worries that for the first time in its history, payments may be late or missed by the Social Security Administration. Department of Housing and Urban Development, going to cut 84% of their staff. Even over at the DOD, they're talking about 8% of the staff being cut. Hundreds of workers that were keeping the power on the Northwest had to be rehired when they got fired. That's also on top of let's not forget, the National Nuclear Security Administration, who actually are taking care of our 5,000 nuclear warheads and make sure there's no radiation links. They fired all those guys and scrambled. And allegedly, they're being rehired now. They've been rehired. But once again, this is the kind of things they're doing. We saw that at VA. Over at VA, this VA secretary touted that he'd canceled $2 billion in contracts, only discovered the only thing they had done was gone into the NAICS code, NAICS, which is the codes for contracts. They looked at one that said consulting, got it in their head, the consulting contracts for like McKinsey type stuff, and they actually just deleted 800 small business contracts for veterans, with things like, minor things like actually cleaning and calibrating the medical equipment in our hospitals that take care of millions of veterans' health care. The program that actually helped veterans process their benefit claims completely was canceled. That's all handled by a contractor. That's why it's working so well lately. Those are things they had to scramble within a day. Within a day, they had to try and reinstate those contracts. A source of mine called me yesterday and told me that the way they're reinstating those contracts is they're calling the CEO of each small business and company, and they have a 4-hour deadline to explain why their contract matters and should be reinstated. That's it. Some 20-year-old, 25-year-old from DOGE calls the call business, hopefully can get hold of them, says you have 4 hours to explain your contract and justify why we should keep it. That's the highly specialized system they're doing to analyze the needs of 9 million veterans who go to the VA for benefits and healthcare. It's a chaos, and that's the goal. We'll have a lot to talk about that, obviously, with our first guest and our other guest. I'm not going to waste a lot of time because he's waiting here already, and I really appreciate seeing him as always. I can see him in the green room, which makes me happy. I don't know. I always get happy when I see Simon Rosenberg. Simon Rosenberg is, of course, the producer. Go ahead. It's your turn, JJ. I'm going to screw this thing up as always. Most of these tech glitches aren't JJ. You know that, right? It's actually screwing it up. I always try to blame JJ, but it's actually Simon Rosenberg. Welcome. He's the producer of the incredible Substack community, the Hopium Chronicles, founder and president of NDN, New Policy Institute. But now you're dedicated to telling the story that you need. You're going to fight back. Simon, welcome to the show. It's great to have you, brother.
Fred, it's great to be here. Thanks for the opportunity.
Oh, no, thank you. And thanks for boosting us. We saw in the chat before we went live, Simon, that we've got people saying, hey, I'm here because of Simon. He boosted it. So, hey, thanks for bringing your audience along. We really appreciate it.
I have to admit, I don't do a lot of media on Sunday morning, so I wanted to make sure we had some friends with us today.
I get up here every morning. We got 1,000 or more. I know, I get it. We're growing. The channel's grown. We're doing well. We started this about 2 months ago as competition to the Sunday shows, and got a lovely audience growing. and I should I don't have comments on it right now. I have to look at comments, but we have a very passionate audience. So I appreciate being part of it.
Yeah.
Pretty intense 5 or 6 weeks we've had here, hasn't it? Every day is a new horror show. How are you keeping up with all of it, honestly, brother?
That's actually a really good question, because I think that one of the things I talk about inside the Hopium community is that we have to not chase the new. And what I mean by that is that every day Trump is throwing 6, 7, 8, 9 things at us on purpose to have the news media chase these things, which distracts us from the real story. I mean, the real story is that Donald Trump and Elon Musk have launched an attack on the America of the four freedoms, our global rules-based order abroad, our democracy here at home. And every day there's a new chapter in that story. But I think the key is to not lose sight of the main story and the stuff that really matters, what's important, which is that, there is no greater betrayer of our democracy and our history than Donald Trump. And that we're going to have to fight like hell every day to make sure that the damage they're doing doesn't continue, and the additional damage doesn't continue in the United States, and that we ultimately prevail over what is, I think, a sustained attack on what I call the America of the four freedoms.
And I've really been enjoying that. Obviously I'm an avid reader, that, not just Blowing Smoke. That's the first person I signed up for, the first news, the first subject I recommended when I joined it. You've been talking about that. This isn't just really, and it is hard to comprehend what's happening, right? The Democrats have been focused on the economic angles, not sort of micro details, but you say it well. This is really truly an attack on the very basic pillars of our country, those four freedoms. That's how you see it, isn't it?
I don't think we should call him President Trump anymore, by the way. I think we have to come up with a new name, comrade or dictator or some other term, because he's betraying the presidency itself, and we're seeing an incredible betrayal of everything that has made America great and a most important nation in the world. And the stakes here are very high. And I think that, to your point about what you said about Democrats, we have been operating, I think, in sort of an old frame, meaning that you focus on his economic weakness, the attack on Medicaid, these things that are clearly eroding his popularity. The American people are turning on him. His job approval is down. Consumer confidence is way down. The economy is slowing. Inflation is rising. Those kinds of traditional ways that we played the game, the Democrats are doing a really good job at. We're just not in that game anymore. And it's why, we have to set up, open up, I think, a second front against Trump and Musk that is about this attack on the country and the dissembling of our government and what it really means and the damage that they're doing. Because by the time the midterms turn around, and let's say we have a great midterm and win back the House and Senate, the amount of damage that will have been done to the country will be unacceptable. And so Democrats can do both, right? We can both excel in the tactical and traditional game, which I think we're doing really well at. But we've got to develop a new sort of second front, as I call it, against Trump and Elon on the attack on the America of the four freedoms, the dissembly of our government. It's what the moment requires, Fred. And I listened to your opening statement. You're clearly, just the stuff that's happening with veterans right now is so unimaginable and such an extraordinary betrayal of their service, of our country, of our understanding of patriotism and who we are. It's a violation of all of that. And it's why I think that, I know you'll ask me about this. I just think it's also really important to recognize that Trump is weaker than he appears from the outside. And I think we are stronger if we all work really hard and organize together.
Yeah. And I use veterans a lot. And it's funny. I said this, I was a veterans advocate for 10 years. I think you know that. And what I've always said in that conversation, people say, why veterans, Fred? Well, veterans, first of all, our military as an all volunteer force is a direct reflection of the society it represents. I was taught that in Military Science 101 as a freshman in 1983. Okay. that this is of all volunteer force, we are America. And in many ways, a microcosm of what we face. And so if you could say, well, here's what veterans are facing in these, it really does show that lark. Like, look, if you think it's happening here, it's a great canary in the coal mine for me. And the great thing about veterans is we talk. It's like I'm sure you've got your sources too. I know you do, but it's like I get stuff sent to me. I think before Doug Collins, the VA secretary, knows. Like I get notes from his meetings before he has them, because veterans talk and they're horrified by what they're seeing. And you're nailing it. I mean, you said you're seeing cracks. What are some of the cracks you're seeing?
Well, you're seeing a lot of cracks actually in Trump, and you're seeing the public turn against him. Consumer confidence
Yeah, you mentioned that.
is
Yeah.
dropping. You're seeing in his congressional support, you're starting to see Republicans be more bold in their statements and not necessarily in their actions, but words
Yeah.
have to come first before actions. They're very worried about what's happening with Russia right now. They're
Yeah.
very worried about this Trump budget plan that's going to savage Medicaid, which serves over 70 million Americans. They're worried about what Musk is doing and his disassembly of the U.S. government, and even things like what appears to be a hostile takeover of the aviation security in America, and so you're starting to see far more public statements of condemnation or questioning. Even Mike Johnson today, in an interview he did on CNN, where he talked about how Zelensky, this new line they have that Zelensky has to step down, he was asked about Putin. And he said Putin is a KGB agent. He's a bad man. We can't trust him. We shouldn't be doing anything with him. This is Mike Johnson this morning, after citing Trump's talking point that he was given about Zelensky, then went on and said, we can't trust Putin. We shouldn't be working with him, which is a clear repudiation.
I don't understand.
No, but it's a clear repudiation of Trump. I mean, there's no way to interpret that in any other way. That the Speaker of the House this morning repudiated the president for what he did over the last few days. And I think that this is why, we don't know. Look what happened in Syria recently. I'm sure you talked about this, Fred, in all of your commentary. Syria went, the regime fell, and you never know when, these things are going to happen. When the cracks become, the little cracks become big cracks, and the little wins become big wins. You just have to keep pushing. And I think that the key here is that I think Trump is more unstable and fragile because the scale of his betrayal of the country is so extraordinary that we should be able to use this to continue to drive down his approval rating and cause Republicans to further weaken in their support of him. Mike Lawler, who's one of the most endangered Republican House members, has been all over social media the last 48 hours criticizing Trump for his canoodling with Putin on Friday, right? So
and he's getting his ass kicked in New York, by the way. Mike Lawler's,
So these cracks are appearing, and the key thing is that they will get bigger. Little wins will become big wins if we keep working really hard and keep the pressure on.
Yeah, and I think that's the key is that, and Democrats are getting beat up, right? They're getting beat up. I'll have Ami Bera on later. I actually spoke to him Friday. I ask every single one of these elected officials from the Democrat side to get beat up, and they're getting told they're not doing enough. They're getting a ton of calls. I've read your stuff. You're seeing some good things. I know you talked about they're joining in these lawsuits. Tell me a little bit like what you're starting to see some finally organized resistance coming out, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, look, let's just all acknowledge is that the Democrats in the House and Senate were not ready for this moment, right? Like it's just now. The question is now, what do we do?
Right.
Leader Jeffries has set up a group that is rapid response and litigation group, I think it's called. They had their first big endeavor on Friday where they filed an amicus brief in one of the lawsuits against Trump for his disassembly of the government. This was an important moment because it is critical that if you believe that what Musk and Trump are doing is wildly illegal and unconstitutional, in any democracy, the idea that a leader could just invalidate things that have been passed by Congress, if that's the case, then there's no reason to have a Congress. And Trump is acting in ways that are so outside of any understanding of what a democracy could be, that it was critical that the body whose rights were being trampled, right, whose constitutional authorities were being trampled, the House and Senate, needed to speak to the public and to the legal system about why they believed that their authorities were being usurped by Trump and Musk. And so the absence of that amicus brief or some kind of definitive statement from the House and Senate Democrats was a glaring absence, and that began to get filled on Friday. It's encouraging that in that regard. And then the second thing is that I do think that the pressure that the Democratic community is putting on our leaders in helping them understand what the mission is now, in the calls that we're making to them, giving them ideas about what we think they should be doing now and how they should be acting and how we should be responding, I think is helping create greater understandings in our elected leaders about what's possible for them now and what they need to be doing. Because they need to not just be legislators and executives. They need to be communicators and influencers and leaders of this ferocious opposition that we have to build. And for some of them, this has been a little bit of an old dogs, new tricks thing, Fred.
Yeah.
But our job not only continue to put the pressure on the Republicans to do the right thing, it's also our job to put the pressure on the Democrats to
There
do
you
the
go.
right thing. And I think it's why I'm encouraging my community to have everyone be making calls every single day to their elected representatives in the Senate and the House and letting them understand what the mission is now and helping them get there as quickly as possible.
That's it, and it is an old dog's new trick thing, and a lot of them, and it does struggle. You see these statements that come out very diplomatic when we're not really want. A lot of people don't want diplomacy anymore, right? We want fight, and you've told them, they need to get beyond the economic argument. Chasing the egg prices thing has been kind of stupid. I mean, I guess the next question then is, as we get close to our end too, is what's next in the fight? Like, what can we do? There's upcoming elections, there's organizing. I love your newsletter. The last half of your newsletter is, here's what you should be doing. Here's the, tell us a little bit about that, especially for people familiar. You got a pretty hardcore list what you're building right now. So this is how we have to fight back, right?
Yeah. Listen, I mean, I think there are a couple of ways. One is that we have to, I think this new muscle that we're developing and this new understanding of big citizenship, as I call it, where we are calling our reps every day, our elected reps, hopefully at every level of government, letting them know what's required of them now in this national emergency that we're in, which I think we actually are in a national emergency. That's the number one thing. I can't tell you how important that's been. It has stirred people to action. It's intimidated Republicans. I think and also, by the way, if you have Republican reps and they do the right thing, you should be calling them too and acknowledging to your leaders, not just what they need to be doing that they're not doing, but when they do the right thing. Yeah. You also should be calling and letting them know, because it creates incentive for them to continue to do the right thing. I think the second thing is we do have elections coming up. The most important is in Wisconsin on April 1st.
Yep.
We're involved with Susan Crawford's race there. And I've also been raising money to help Ken Martin get off the ground in a strong way at the DNC and other projects. But I think the key thing is, we talk about this at Hopium, is that it's about doing more and worrying less. I don't know that we can really worry less anymore, but I think the key is to do more, to channel your frustration, anxiety, fear, worry about the future of your country, which you should be rightly worried about, but channeling it into action. It is critical that we become doers and that our patriotism is channeled and our love of country is channeled into concrete action in order to save our country in a time of enormous challenge. And what I am heartened by and what I'm optimistic about is that this sort of bottom-up way this is all happening probably will make this more sustainable over time. I think that there are a lot of people who are getting up, who are organizing these protests at Tesla and other things that are happening, and they're taking ownership over the process. And I think that even though I wish that our leaders were leading this more, the fact that this is all happening organically, spontaneously in every community across the country will likely make this more sustainable and effective over time, because millions of people have ownership over the process. They're not followers, they're leaders. And I think that, Fred, I can say one thing to everyone here is that, do not complain about the stuff that isn't happening. Go build this opposition movement yourself. Every time you take an action, you're building the opposition movement. You're making it stronger. Every time you engage 10 or 20 of your friends to join you in whatever activity it is, you are building this opposition. If millions of us build this opposition from the bottom up, it's my belief this is going to be more effective than if we were told what to do every day. We're Democrats, right? We're not very good always at taking orders from the big guys. And
what?
Yeah. And so I think that I'm actually
never heard that.
Yeah, I know. I think in a funny way, I'm actually, even though this is not happening the way we all want, the way it is happening may make it more sustainable and effective over time. But we have to have urgency. The damage that's being done to the country, our reputation, our economy, our healthcare system, all of it is extraordinary. And it's why we have to show up every day and do the work to preserve and protect our democracy.
And we're at a point now, Simon, where it's beyond just preserve and protect democracy. We are going to start losing lives here soon, right? I mean, I think that's the thing that shocks me a lot as I talk to, for example, Congressman Bera, who's a doctor, and others, professionals inside the VA and others. These tweaks, I mean, we're relatively early in all this, right? It's still just 6 weeks or so there's going to be real effects. I mean, people are going to lose. I mean, we're going to start losing lives here soon, and then things get really ugly fast, don't they?
Well, let's be very clear. I mean, what Elon Musk did with USAID guarantees that millions of people are going to die, and that in effect he's a mass murderer, as Trump is as well. We will now be America, this country, will now be responsible for mass death all over the world, and that will be haunting us for the rest of our lives and our children's lives, because it's almost it's almost unstoppable at this point. The second thing that's happening is you're seeing the exponential growth of the measles outbreak, and this is the whole point about pandemics, right? And these kinds of outbreaks is that they don't increase arithmetically; they increase exponentially. And we've already seen somebody die, right? A young unvaccinated kid in Texas died. Finally, the HHS has decided, but Robert Kennedy the other day, who downplayed this and claimed this was just like every other measles outbreak, which was an unbelievable, can I say it, Fred, fucking lie.
Please do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, is that, he's now, HHS is now sending vaccines into Texas and New Mexico.
Oh, what do you know?
Yeah, but this is now spreading to other states, and the government of Mexico has now issued a warning their citizens not to come to the United States because of the measles outbreak. And so I would also just say that one of the other, as we sort of list the cascading effects of the ugliness of Trump, is that who's going to be a tourist in the United States? Who's going to come to the World Cup next year when it's here, when you've got rampant, guns here that are killing citizens in ways that are not happening in any other civilized country? You've got now pandemic challenges where we're not vaccinating our people, acting as if we're outside of the modern world, and where you also just have the not wanting to give money to Trump and to the America of today, and all the tourism dependent businesses in the United States, the hotels, the restaurants, which are already under incredible duress because of Trump's immigration policy and rounding people up. We could see a massive drop-off of tourists in the United States, which will further depress a slowing economy. We're also probably going to see less business investment, because who wants to now get involved in the ugliness of this place? I mean, the cascading set of, and this is why I think that we have to move with incredible speed. The things are being broken that are going to be very hard to repair. And we've got to, work 24/7, 365, Fred, to reclaim our future that is under incredible threat right now.
And we're going a little long. We're waiting for a guest to join, to be honest. But I do want to, on that note, and it's something I really want your perspective on. I mean, for a lot of us, and I talk to a lot of our viewers and our friends, and it's like, are we going to be able to get this stuff back, right? And you've written about that. Like and I think that's the goal, right? I mean, I think the way they destroyed USAID, it's beyond the law. I mean, if you get everybody fired, you bring them all home, you cancel the contracts downrange, even if a judge says you have to rebuild it, it's going to be impossible.
They can't.
They can't. It's done, right?
No, Elon.
How do I answer that?
No, I mean, look, Elon. The USAID story is actually a very big story, right?
Right. It's a good.
It's something that
right?
doesn't cost very much money, right? It's a very small part of our government, and by burning it to the ground and turning it off in a week, right? He was, first of all, testing his ability to go into an independent agency and literally turn it off in 7 days, which is what they did. But the impact for America's reputation in the world is, we just walked away from 100 countries where we were there protecting their citizens, and their citizens now are going to die because of the United States, and because in our name, and with our money, with our government is now doing things that will savage America's reputation for the next, for generations. And there's almost no way to repair it now. And that's why Elon was so ferocious about his attack on USAID, because he knew of the global implications of this. And, the very first person to cheer him on was Viktor Orban, right? And then, Moscow has been talking about the evils of USAID, because USAID was the way that most countries in the world interacted with the United States, in a way that spoke to our generosity and our values and our value of human life. And the betrayal here, what Elon's done is, look, they are moving fast and breaking things. And it's why we have to move fast and to stop them from breaking things. And I think that, I'm very appreciative of our leaders' efforts and focus on the budget bill and on inflation. But my God, is it time for the leaders of the Democratic Party, including our former presidents, to stand up for the country that has been the shining light for the people of the world for so long? Because this light now is being dimmed, and our job is to prevent that from happening, Fred.
And I really appreciate you, Simon. I'm going to let you guys catch you much longer. I'm sure you got things to do on a Sunday, but it is. I mean, I think that's the job of a lot of us, right? I think for me, it's kind of funny because I'm sure you felt the same way after the election. We were kind of like, where do we fit in all this now, right? This wasn't what we hoped for. We had both been pretty confident. We met the DNC, remember, and we had hopeful outcomes in our eyes, and instead the whole thing got flipped. And we had been predicting these things to come, right? We knew, we had studied. Both of us read Project 2025. We'd done videos and writing about it. We knew, and here they are. But it's interesting how it's wonderful to see a community building around. Building hope. That's why I think I love about your stuff is in light of all this, you still have to find hope and move forward as best you can. And I think that's a great icon and a great place to finish. So, Fred, tell folks, go ahead.
Yeah, no, but because Fred, what they want is they want us to give up. Right.
Right. That's exactly it. Right. So, and not be happy and not laugh, right?
Right. And so doing this work every day is the most powerful form of resistance you can imagine. Yeah. It's also the most powerful form of patriotism one can imagine at this time. And so love being in this fight with you, brother. Keep up the great work. And thanks for the opportunity to be with you.
Man, Simon, thank you. Thanks for staying along with me as we play. I just appreciate you. Don't forget to tell everybody who don't know how they could possibly not know, but tell everybody where to find you.
Yeah, Hopium Chronicles. It's free to subscribe. You can become a paid member too. That would be terrific. But our community, I try to keep it free. Most of our content is free and accessible to people during this time of challenge. Yeah. You can find me at hopiumchronicles.com. Thanks, Fred.
Thank you, Simon. Good to see you, bro. Enjoy your Sunday. Thanks for joining us.
Bye-bye.
See you soon. Bye. Yeah, there isn't a moment I don't want. I mean, I could probably I could do an hour and a half with Simon alone. So many of his family and community joined us today. Thank you for doing that. We appreciate you. I hope while you're here, you'll find something you like. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Subscribe to our Substack, FPWellman.substack.com. We've got a lot of stuff there too. We're writing and adding videos as we go. So, as it wouldn't be on Democracy Sunday without a guest having a hard time getting on to the studio. So we're going to keep on. But you know what? We also drive on. You guys are used to us. So I'm an old soldier. We make do with what we got. And so let's get on with our panel. We got one key guy here. So let's get him on in. And when Mark McEwen got the opportunity to join us, I'm sure he'll join us. But JJ, let's move on, brother. Uh-oh, did I lose JJ? There he is. Hey, there he is. And don't forget the intro. See, Alex, we're going to start talking, and JJ's going to hit the intro. Watch. Fine. It's a panel on Alex Vindman. Welcome to the show. For those of you who don't know Alex Vindman, I don't know if you've been hiding under a rock. Alex, of course, key witness first impeachment trial, Donald J. Trump, retired Army Lieutenant Colonel, like me when he was serving the National Security Council. His first book, Here Right Matters, is a New York Times bestseller, and now you've got a second book out, which you've been on tour plugging. While it has been an adventure, the new book, of course, The Folly of Realism, discusses the history of U.S., Russia, and Ukraine and how we brought this one. So, Alex, man, always a pleasure to see you on the show. Sorry you're a panel of one. Mark will join us shortly, I hope, and then we'll just keep on driving on, right?
Always a pleasure to chat with you, Fred. But before we move too far in,
here we go.
I was listening to Simon, and when you're down in the dumps, that's the guy you want to tune into. I mean, I think it's both smart and optimistic and powerful opportunity to listen to ways to potentially get involved and take action and take charge of our democracy. So he's off already. He's not hearing me say this, but he's really an important leader.
Yeah, and I think what I love is, Simon's got his Substacks are amazing. What it is it gives a plan, right? And you and I are soldiers, right? It's always like, okay, I got that. Okay, it's bad. We're both old. You're an infantryman. I was a 101st Airborne guy. If you watch Band of Brothers, one of my favorite lines in the entire series, Band of Brothers.
I was 506th.
Right. Oh, there you guys. Right. I forgot. Sorry. Yeah. you're in the 100. The great line as they're marching into Bastogne, and it was Jimmy Fallon of all things who shows up in a Jeep. But let's not go there. And he says, hey, you're going to be surrounded, and he's like, we're the airborne. We're supposed to be surrounded. And it really, even as an air assault guy like me, that was always that we knew we were landing somewhere and we were going to be the only ones there. And that's where we are. And Simon is somebody mentions here. There's no moping. There's no action allowed. You and I would land. We'd get there with what you got. You gather the troops you got, and you just go. We did that in Iraq in 2003. It's like, okay, this is all I got. Oh wow, we're way ahead of the troops. Well, let's just keep going. It's that's what we do. That's why I think I love about Simon and people like you and me. It's like it's action. It's when you and I work together at VoteFest. It's like, all right, this is great. We can look at our navels all day, but in the end, we have to move forward and get things done. And that means, and this time is exactly what we got to do, right? It's time to get in the fight, isn't it?
Definitely.
Yeah, well, it's great to have you. And I appreciate jumping in. And as always, for the behind the scenes, we always offer the behind the scenes, Alex, to our viewers. And it's like, and behind the scenes was everybody canceling the panel, and and I texted my usual backups, Alex and Rena, Alex's wife, Rachel, and of course Rena Shaw is a dear friend. They were the first guests we had on the panel over 2 months ago, and I said, "Are you guys available?" Like, no, but Alex is. I'm like, okay. And for those.
I'm happy to be your filler. You need a friend.
You said you would be, but I said to everybody, I said, Rachel, can he be funny? Because it's like I've known him a long time, but it's that's how we do it. We get in here and we get to work. And Rachel's your agent of chaos. Rachel truly is the agent of chaos. Everything's Rachel's. She's like, no, Alex is doing it. I just told him, just send him the link. So I'm glad she keeps you above ground, my friend. Before we get going though, we do need, and we'll show the promo.
She might not even know what I'm doing. I mean, I might have it could be something critical, and she's like, that doesn't make a difference. You're going to go on with Fred. So that's it.
Yeah, I love it. Well, it's been an interesting week for you. I mean, the midst of publishing your book, briefly cover the book. We'll show the promo at the end. The new book's different. I mean, tell us about your new book, and then I want to segue into talk about fucking timing.
The subtitle, frankly, the subtitle is what even more so than the title. The title sometimes needs a little bit of explanation. What is the folly of realism? What is realism? Esoteric IR theory about all states maximizing their interests and just no care of values and things of that nature. The subtitle, it says it all: how the West deceived itself about Russia and betrayed Ukraine. And I'm telling my publisher that the next print, which we've had 4 of them already, by the way, before the publication date. The next one we're gonna do I want it dirty. I want to basically cross the D out and replace with an S in red. So how the West deceives itself about Russia and betrays Ukraine, because it's ongoing. I mean, most of this book was written. The original version of this book was written to finish up my doctoral dissertation at Johns Hopkins. I finished there in December of 22. So seemingly a while ago, like a year into the almost a year into the war, but a while ago. We're well away from any Trump 2.0 or anything like that. It was still early on into the Biden administration. They were screwing up a fair bit, frankly, with just a day late and a dollar short policies. Succumbing to the folly of realism, succumbing to misplaced fears about Putin saber rattling. But we weren't where we are today. And what I did was I rewrote this whole kind of esoteric academic-y thing you do to satisfy the committee for the general audience. Because the reason I took this book on was I wanted to understand how we went from the hopes of all these different opportunities with regards to Russia and Ukraine in 1990 that were supposed to be, 2 powerhouses of democracy emerging out of the collapse of the Soviet Union, and how we steadily chipped away at those possibilities through mistakes, through not seeing the warning signs of Russia turning from mischief making in its own backyard because it believed it had a privileged sphere of influence to hybrid warfare, economic coercion, election interference, to military aggression, and what role the U.S. had, and why this other significant player in the region, why they ended up being vulnerable along the way when we had it. Talking to Clinton and Gore, they had it in mind that we were going to make massive investments and bring these 2 countries into democracy, into prosperity, and we failed with both. So I wanted to explain this to the American public from my study and from my experience, because it's not just looking at these interviews with the Clintons and the Gores and the Kuchmas and the Yushchenkos, and these are the Ukrainian presidents, and Condoleezza Rice and all these other policy like powerhouses. Bob Gates played a key role.
Yeah.
Bob Gates, if you remember who he was a secretary, director of the CIA and Secretary of Defense. And this guy, back in 1989, way back, kicked off this effort to take a look at what happens if Russia falls apart. And it set the tone that everything we were going to do, now he didn't intend it to be this way, but everything we were going to do was going to go through the Russia lens. And ultimately, the only thing that was written recently was the epilogue. It was the 72 hours, 96 hours after the Trump win on November 5th. And how much of that, has been just completely borne out in fact, and the fact that we are continuing to put Russia first, but in the most extreme way possible. Yes, if we were wishful in our thinking before, or we succumb to fears, this is completely different. This is an abject rejection of all history, of all the lessons of the past, embracing Putin without any prospects of achieving anything, and casting aside our allies, and just an abhorrent behavior in the White House. All that just being live right when the book releases, like last.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I was actually, I got the question, and when I'm looking forward to Mark joining, I think he may join us still. Mark's a healthcare advocate. And I was just thinking to myself, holy shit, how's your blood pressure doing since Friday? I know how my blood pressure was on Friday. Was watching this clownishness, this stupidity emanate from our White House, and this foolishness that I've never seen like it in my life. I'm a lot older than you are, Alex, and it was just insanity to me. Just insanity. I mean, it had to make you insane. I haven't had a chance to talk to you since Friday.
Yeah. Well, there was a lot of, frankly, there's a quite a bit of deja vu, and that is connected to, because I was involved in a number of these different historical events in one way or another. I mean, mainly, as a junior guy watching things unfold in the Orange Revolution. I was deployed in Iraq at the time. Then watching the Russians turn to aggression, saying, "Oh, this Orange Revolution, this rejection of Russia, was being driven by the CIA or by the West," and then aggressively starting to attack us. Ultimately, getting involved into this war in Russia's own backyard between Russia and Georgia in 2008. Graduating in 2014. At that point, frankly, in 2008, I was already involved, because I was the lead planner for this exercise called Immediate Response 08 in Georgia, and I had just left Georgia and right before the Russians attacked, so already kind of involved there when we were working with the Georgians on peacekeeping operations and military. And then by the time you get to 2014, I'm intimately involved. I'm a foreign area officer. Just finished up the training pipeline, a year in Ukraine. I got my fancy schmancy degree from Harvard. Picked up another language, Ukrainian, even though that's where I was born. I grew up speaking Russian because of the imperialism. And then being stationed in Moscow for 3 years. And watching the relationship devolve from just typical, standard fare kind of hostility, but still having some relationship with the Russians, to a hard break. And the national security community understood that there was a pretty hard break, especially the Russia watchers.
Yeah.
But it didn't permeate up through, the Obama administration, how significant this was. And certainly none of those lessons have been learned by Trump, one, who was overseeing 4 years of Russia-Ukraine war, didn't do shit to end that war. Then, promised to end it before he was inaugurated, day one, and actually set back the cause of peace last week with his UN bullshit UN vote, damning Ukraine and embracing Russia, and then attempting to beat up on Zelensky, who looked like a fucking badass.
He did. Zelensky just held his own. He wasn't taking shit for those guys.
What you got?
I know. He's like, all right. You
Vance
know?
and Trump are like attacking him. He's like cool, calm, collected.
Yeah.
They looked like both bullies
Yeah.
and weaklings somehow in the same moment. And
Yeah.
this guy just, is like leader of a country at war. These guys have shown themselves to be tough.
What 6
Formidable.
assassination attempts on his
Yeah.
ass, and these assholes think
And-
they're tough. And I loved when he fucking went after JD. Like, well, have you been there? And,
Yeah.
and JD was fucking sputtering. Like he had nothing. I mean, JD. Oh well, it's all propaganda. Like, dude, you look like a fucking.
The guy did not want to fight. He wanted to go there. He wanted
No.
to sign his deal. He wanted
No.
to see if there's a way to get the U.S. more interested under Trump, who's highly transactional. This is the folly of realism. Everything is super short-sighted, super transactional. This
Right.
guy, death. This is the death cult, poison Kool-Aid phase
Yeah.
with Trump of the folly of realism. And he knew that he needed to have some sort of hook. That historically, when we had a strong relationship with Ukraine, it's because there was a hook. It was denuclearization. It was a promise of Ukraine becoming a democracy. And this rare earths deal, it was okay. It was not going to be a bad thing. And he came there, but he was not going to look weak for his own people that he needed to look strong for. He was not going to look weak in front of Putin, who was watching this, with his freaking vodka in hand, and he was not going to let Trump and Vance recast history that Russia's the aggressor. Russia has been a brutal, barbaric invader, and Ukraine has been defending itself, and not just itself, but defending democracy the world over, defending Europe, and allow a bunch of nonsense to slide. And that's all this. That's how the fight got started.
Yeah.
Lies by Trump and Vance, and really Zelensky calling him, how the one of the few people to call him.
Right.
The Republicans are not going to do it, and frankly, our allies are doing a soft touch. They're kind of doing a whole bunch of mollycoddling. When Macron comes in, he tries to flatter him, and so does Starmer, and so does everybody else. That I got it. They want to keep him on sides, but Zelensky is the one that could tell that this is not going to go anywhere, and to me, it's clear that that is making emboldening Trump to think that he could just act the way he wants. I think, frankly, our allies, traditional allies, need to probably be more clear in staking out their territory. I don't want to burn bridges. I hate this idea of getting a cold shoulder. There's already consequences. A major Norwegian private company that fuels our fleets as they're operating in the high north refused to fuel a Virginia class attack submarine, and that's not good. That is bad. That is one of those things that people aren't paying attention to, but that's damaging U.S. national security. We're losing.
Yeah, everybody gets into they talk about the Canada booing, right? They all get all freaking done, and I think you and I agree. It's like they're not booing me, y'all. They're not booing me and Alex. They're not booing you on the show. They're booing the president of the United States and his ridiculous policies that are burning bridges. But those are bridges that we can't rebuild very easily. I mean, once they're burned, and when the world order changes, and you're seeing it, Europe is answering, right? Europe is saying, fuck you. We're not, I mean, it's in a lot of ways it is going to cause a reordering that may or not be overdue, but it's also terrifying to watch unravel in it.
Yeah. I think there's something to be said about the fact that the post Trump world will look different. I think the fact is that 4 years is a pretty significant amount of time in this dangerous world. The Europeans and frankly, our Pacific allies are going to have to consolidate around their own shared values and interests with their neighbors, and do things that are going to exclude the U.S. But I would also say that the U.S. will, even with the massive damage that Trump is doing, will still be a critically important player going forward, and they will embrace us. Maybe with some tough medicine, with some conditionality. When the UK left the EU under Brexit, it did a lot of harm to itself. Eventually, it might come back. It's still continuing its economic relationships with Europe, but there are some conditions to it. We might have some conditions, even though we're the most important player. We set the table. We establish the world order. I think the fact is that we will be embraced, but maybe with some conditionality that we have to be, we have to maintain ourselves as a good player. We can't just, do whatever the heck we want, discounting our friends.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, on a lighter note, I was going to give you shit about your appearance on. So the funniest thing happened the other day. Our son, who's 17, came in and he's like, "Oh my god, I've been watching the funniest TikToks." There's this guy, older guy, like I think he's Jewish, and he does these bits where he makes fun of people's societal norms. And when Heather asked and looked, it was Curb Your Enthusiasm clips of Larry David doing, Larry David, and of course you appeared on Curb Your Enthusiasm, so your clips are popping up on your perfect phone call. It's like you've had the most bizarre road in the last. Do you ever just think for a second, like, as you were talking just now, you're talking about all the people you interviewed for your book, and the people, and I knew you back then. You and I met shortly. We actually met before at our store we used to have, and then of course the impeachment, everything else, and like you and like me, we're really weird places 5 years later. I mean, do you ever catch yourself just kind of going, what the fuck? How did I end up here? I mean, it's crazy, right?
It is very strange. I think one of the things I've figured out is that I'm open to all sorts of new experiences that I would have been reluctant to undertake before. Like I get to do interesting things, like appear on Curb Your Enthusiasm a couple times, meet celebrities. But I think in certain regards, either a lightning rod for support or a lightning rod for hate. I just did an interesting Washington Journal C-SPAN thing where basically they, it was about the book, and we had a call in line, Republicans, Democrats, and independents. So interestingly enough, I didn't have that many people nobody really outright attacked me. They all kind of seem to start with like military rank. They might disagree with me on like the facts and stuff like that. But it's interesting. This just in the context of this book, I think some doors were opened up. Like I don't think Bill Clinton would have taken an interview, or some of these other folks would have taken an interview. But at the others on the other side of the table, George Bush blew me off. And I think it's it's because of the fact that I'm a lightning rod, and he didn't want to necessarily be on the record with me for this book, and maybe be accountable for some of the mistakes he made, because I think there were a lot of them in that second Bush administration. So he didn't take that interview with me. Where I think if I was just another military officer pursuing a doctorate, he may have. So it's definitely a double-edged sword. But I'm most honored, I guess, in that I could play a small role in maintaining, in continuing the role that both of us signed up for, decades ago.
Yeah, right.
Taking on some leadership role in defending the nation, in maybe channeling some ideas, and channeling, some good works, giving people hope. That's the biggest blessing of all the things that have unfolded since.
Yeah, having a platform. I mean, I tell people all the time. I'll talk to folks, and you can see the people in our chat. If you have a chance to look at the chat, it's incredible the people we have who join our community, and it's incredibly great the people we have. And then others, we've got this idiot who's just my total stalker, and it's funny. You just got to laugh. I mean, look at this jackassery, dude. We're gonna make fun of you, Matthew, because you're a jackass. I mean, Cernovich. I mean, holy shit, we're gonna boot your ass, Matthew, because you're a fucking fool. But you gotta laugh. I mean, wait a minute. Didn't you talk to Zelensky on his plane this weekend? I understand. Wait. What?
I need to go ahead and respond to Matthew because he's
okay. Good.
And be like, hey, Matthew. I was never that hungry in Ranger School. I actually gave away my some food to, and that helped me with peers, just in case you're wondering.
Look at Cernovich. Oh my God. I mean, I had one guy, my favorite one I ever had, Alex, several years ago after I was bashing the guy that killed the civilians in Afghanistan. And this guy said, you were never in the Ranger Battalion, so you're not a real Ranger. And he reported me at all the Stolen Valor websites, like, this son of a bitch is wearing a Ranger tab, and there's no record of ever being in the Ranger Battalion. Like, no shit, dude. I was a freaking aviator. You could go to Ranger school and not be. It's like, and the infantry. It was funny, Alex. He went to the infantry groups. They're all like, the fuck are you talking about? You know?
I'm guessing that Matthew was some sort of like rear echelon pogue that, I don't want to be too offensive because there are a lot of people do important jobs. But he's probably a truck driver, never did anything, probably didn't deploy, didn't do Ranger school, didn't do airborne school.
Oh, no.
Move on. Go ahead, bring it. I know you're.
Yeah, I know. Oh, he's like my total, like, he's my reply guy on Twitter. And I haven't blocked him because it's just hilarious. He threatened me with, Matthew was the guy. He's like, oh, you say you have 4 combat tours, but you wrote the story in 2013 where you said you only had 3. Like, bro, this is going to shock you. Here's a picture of me in a helicopter in Desert Storm. You're right. I made the whole fucking thing up. And you got to laugh. I mean, it's hard to laugh, though. I mean, it's also kind of fucking terrifying being, like I said, this weekend, you got this new threat. I don't know if you saw the DC attorney is saying that obviously you must have counseled Zelensky or something. I mean, it's like, at some point, I mean, you got to laugh, but also this is real shit now, right? These guys have the power to pursue these conspiracies. I mean, I know it's got to be unnerving.
But they're also knuckleheads. They're like, it's a combination of incompetence. Just I don't know. I don't even know how to describe them, but
It's just whatever that guy. We blocked him. Now we don't want to hear from you, Matthew. You can just go yell on the fucking way. I don't give a shit.
We don't want to hear about you.
Yeah, we don't want to hear from you, Matthew. Yeah, we don't.
We like
goodbye.
It.
Goodbye. Bye. No, it is
way off topic. I mean, let's talk about the folly of realism and the fact that the U.S. keeps. I know we're going to keep it light, but the U.S. keeps making the same mistakes over and over, and frankly, we could do better. My counsel is that there is actually there will be a correction. There's absolutely going to be a correction after 2028, a rejection, because you could see all the damage he's doing. There's going to be a rejection. Yeah. It's just going to be a matter of time before there's a broad rejection. And then I think our leaders are going to be casting around for what do we do? And my counsel is this: values primacy, the centrality of values to interests. Why? Because if you put values front and center, then you don't jump at the bright, shiny objects that our adversaries put in front of us, like Russia has put in front of us, or that you are not weak-kneed when they start to, kind of saber rattle nuclear war or something like that. When these guys are fucking cowards, they're bullies and they like to pick on smaller players. They have no interest in fighting the United States. We would wreck them. So the idea of values primacy is that we focus on what matters. We harden our democracies. We bolster, buttress struggling democracies because there's a growing illiberalism because of the attacks of authoritarians, and we nurture democratic institutions. All of this is important, not for its own kind of humanist, positive vibes type of thing. It's because it's in U.S. interests. Because our democracy, other fellow democracies, are there for us when we're under attack, like they were on 9/11. They will be in our corner. We have a collective defense treaty with them. They're also by far our most important trading partners. They are the source of American prosperity. So when we focus on values, that's how we navigate around the folly of realism, this hyper transactional behavior. And to me, there's definitely something to work towards as pragmatically we go from the most extreme situation that we're seeing now back to some sort of norm and we try to recapture some more leadership. The first thing is we have to stop making these idiotic mistakes that the Trump administration is making just out of ignorance and malice. Malice being a complete disregard for Ukraine without understanding its geopolitical significance, and ignorance because they don't understand or care for the lessons of history. And that's what this book is about. There's the lessons of history and prescribes the way forward. So I'm guessing everybody out there has already probably purchased this book. It's doing pretty well, but I think that they're like, that looks like the questions are slowing down because they're hopping.
Oh, well, Matthew there's threatening to come by my house, and so I'm going to call the cops after we get off and report Matthew Stoll of Cottleville, Missouri, who's decided to threaten me on a public chat. So Go for it, bro. So anyway, we're going to go on. We're going to move on. We got a great interview with our friend, Representative Ami Bera. Alex, I appreciate you diving in here. I appreciate Rachel volunteering you. I just never a dull moment. It's great talking to you as always, my friend, and I appreciate you diving in. Unfortunately, our friend, we're going to have him back next week. Mark McEwen couldn't make it, but we'll get Mark in here. Always a challenge sometimes with technology. In the meantime, JJ, do you have the Folly video? I'd love to show the promo for Alex's book.
In 2019, I testified before Congress exposing events that revealed the profound folly of U.S. foreign policy towards Russia. President Trump pressured Ukraine, igniting the Ukraine scandal and emboldening Russian aggression. But while you might remember that pivotal moment, you might not realize that our failings on Russia didn't begin with Trump. They were decades in the making. I've seen these failures firsthand, serving on the National Security Council, at the Pentagon, and in Russia and Ukraine. Time and again, I've witnessed U.S. leaders from both parties prioritize fleeting gains over lasting security. Policies that paved the way for today's crisis. Russia's war in Ukraine, the most dangerous geopolitical conflict of our time. Now, after 30 years of flawed decision-making across 6 presidencies, we stand at a crossroads. Will we learn from our folly, or will we double down on the same reactive, short-sighted approach, potentially escalating the Russia-Ukraine war and other crises into major confrontations? It is essential that the U.S. move beyond failed assumptions towards a principled foreign policy. This isn't just about understanding past mistakes. It's about fighting for a future where American leadership prioritizes values and long-term security over transactional power plays. A future of moral leadership and greater security. So you could see why I wrote this thing, and part of this is self-promotion, but mainly it's because it's the context is critically important. I just want people to understand where we are, and that there are other options. So it's an audio. I read the first chapter, and Kindle, Amazon, your local bookstore, and then I'm also on a Substack at avindman.com. And
love it.
Having me on, Fred.
Oh, man, what a pleasure. Thanks for diving that grenade. Good luck with the book. Hopefully we'll see it in the New York Times bestseller list this very week after all the craziness. You couldn't have a better time. And congratulations on being a 2-time bestselling author. We're proud of you, my friend. So thanks so much. And we will see you again soon.
Thanks. Bye.
And on with the guest, as we already foretold. We had a chance. Sometimes, as I've mentioned to you guys before, sometimes it's hard to get hold of our friends who are elected officials, tracking them down, getting their time. I had the opportunity to talk to Representative Ami Bera. Dr. Bera is the longest-serving Indian American in the Congress. He's also one of the handful of actual physicians. In light of the ridiculous cuts to Medicaid that are being threatened, how the Republicans are trying to kind of hide the ball a little bit. I really wanted to get Dr. Bera and Representative Bera on. So let's talk to Dr. Ami Bera, California's 6th District. Congressman, welcome to On Democracy Sunday. It's so good to see you again, sir, and I appreciate you taking time for us.
Fred, thanks for having me on. It's certainly an interesting time.
That was it's funny, sir. I start every interview with an elected official. So fun time in Washington, isn't it? And I guess California's a little bit better, but man, it is quite a time to serve on the Hill, isn't it?
It is crazy. I mean, it's only been 5 weeks and it feels like it's been 5 years, right? I mean, every day, every hour, something new.
And this week's been a little crazier than usual, right? So we had the budget framework go through on the Republican side. They're trying to play hide the ball with the truth about Medicaid, Medicare. You're a doctor. You're one of what I believe 6 physicians on the Democratic side serving on the Hill. What's the truth that's really hiding in there about the truth about our healthcare?
I mean, the truth is, if they actually try to push this Republican budget through, you're going to cut $800 billion out of Medicaid. I mean, a lot of people are going to lose healthcare coverage, and it's not just Medicaid, because a lot of the things that folks don't actually know the federal government's paying for, like long-term care for your grandmother, in-home care, for cancer survivors, things like that. That's actually paid out of Medicaid, perhaps through Medicare. So this is going to be felt all across the country. and probably more so in red states. That's why you're starting to see, like, I don't expect to see someone like Senator Josh Hawley vote to protect Medicaid, but you know what? He did. So I think they know that this would be really damaging to their constituents, and it would be politically damaging to them as well.
And that's the thing. And they're playing hide the football, right? I mean, they're trying to say that it's not in there, but they're just saying the Commerce Committee, whatever committee, has to cut $800 billion. And you've seen the charts. I mean, can you explain to folks who don't understand this little hide the football game? They're going to cut it. Whether it says the words cut Medicare or Medicaid and they're not, it's in there, isn't it?
Right. So what they're going to try to say is, oh, this isn't the budget deal. It's just a framework, but it's the stuff that gives instructions. So it says the Energy and Commerce Committee, which oversees Medicaid, has to find $880 billion to cut. And there's no way for them to do that without looking at Medicaid. Now they're trying to say, well, we're just going to look at waste, fraud, and abuse. You know, the Congressional Budget Office said, well, maybe that's $50-60 billion. Okay, we're going to get the other $800 billion. The only way they can do it is by cutting Medicaid, which is going to take health insurance away from millions of Americans. Again, particularly in red states and rural communities. Rural hospitals are already struggling in a lot of these Republican districts. You could see these hospitals close. So that's why you're actually hearing some Republican members say, hey, wait a minute. But Mike Johnson's going to try to bait and switch this. And I think that's when it gets real for Joe the plumber.
I think so too. And I live in Missouri, and we've had some dozen rural hospitals close, and it's not getting better. And that's going to be a real impact on real Americans of every stripe. It's going to be really hard to figure out who voted for who when everybody's losing their health care in it.
It is. And again, we saw this in Trump's first term when they tried to take the ACA away. Look, right. The basics of government are, food, shelter, clothing, safety, security, and healthcare is one of those basic components. None of us knows when we're going to get sick, when we're going to need to go to the hospital, et cetera. That is a basic function of government, just providing that safety net service. And again, Medicaid is extremely popular. It's, if you look at polling data, it's the last thing people want to cut. And it's probably the first thing the Republicans are going to go after.
And that's not the only place they're attacking our healthcare. We've also got now a week or two, I guess, of RFK Jr., and already we've seen 2 people die of measles for the first time in 10 years. Incredibly dangerous. And to see him at the cabinet meeting when asked about that, well, we have measles outbreaks every year. I don't think we have measles outbreaks every year, do we? I mean,
not like this. I mean, you're seeing an outbreak spreading in Texas. These are a lot of unvaccinated folks. It is also impacting some vaccinated folks. But this isn't stuff that we've seen for years and decades. I mean, we've got a very effective measles vaccine. This is a disease that largely was eradicated in the United States, and we're seeing it come back.
And it's an incredibly dangerous disease. I don't think, and you're as a doctor, I think people because we haven't experienced so long, they kind of laugh it off. But measles is truly a very deadly disease when you're exposed to it without vaccination, isn't it?
Absolutely. Measles is a deadly disease, particularly for kids and infants. It causes brain swelling, things like that. So it's not to be taken lightly. And it is something that used to kill tens of thousands of folks before we had the vaccine.
And maim them too. And I think, again, people have just gotten so comfortable forgetting that they get comfortable in their stupidity. So you're a physician. It really feels there's an attack on science, right? Evidence-based science. I mean, today it's Friday. We heard today they're firing 1,000 NOAA, which is the weather service. I mean, it's got to be shocking for you as a physician to see what we're seeing as a whole government attack on science in a lot of ways, aren't we?
Absolutely. I mean, we've seen this for a while in the Republican Party, the attack on climate science. I used to be on the Science, Space, and Technology Committee, and they denied that the climate was changing. It's like, wait a minute, just go look at a thermometer, and you can see that it's changing. We can debate what's causing that change, but let's accept the objective facts. NOAA is incredibly important because that, with the storms we're having, with the freakish weather that we're seeing all across this world, they're the premier weather forecasting agency. And then a little known thing, at the FDA, they have this vaccine board that comes together, the top scientists in the world, and they get together around this time of year to say, okay, what's the flu going to be like 6 months from now? They look at what's happening in the Southern Hemisphere, and then they come up with the formulation for the flu vaccine. They just disbanded that board and said, well, they're not going to meet. Well, how are we going to know what flu vaccine we should have next fall? And that's a problem.
It's terrifying, and it's going to have impact now and later, and it's those 6 degrees. It's the second order effects. I think we're forgetting a lot of times. On that same line along things, I know, we actually, I think last time we talked about the HERO Act that you had introduced, and that goes to mental health care in America, right? We have a mental health care crisis as well. I'm sure that, we know that's under attack. I can't tell you, sir, I don't know how many of your constituents are writing you about their mental health as federal employees right now. Are you going to reintroduce the HERO? I know it didn't go through last section. Are you going to reintroduce the HERO Act and talk about mental health around our first responders, especially in light of the LA fires, for example?
Yeah, in fact, we are, and we've got a press conference next Tuesday with a bunch of.
I teed that up. That wasn't set up.
But we are, and you see the mental health, the stress on first responders, firefighters, the things
Right.
that they have to go through. But we also see it in our kids now. You're seeing high rates of anxiety, depression. That's another bill that we just introduced to try to understand this epidemic of loneliness and isolation. We've talked about it a lot with our seniors, the number of folks that are just shut-ins, but we're now seeing it in our kids too. So bipartisan, Congressman Flood from Nebraska, Pete Ricketts, who's also a senator from Nebraska, and Chris Murphy, we're all working on this to try to understand it, because you see these diseases of despair, addiction, depression, anxiety, and I think we've got to understand how to address that.
And it's just getting worse. It's just a very weird time in the United States. We see economic anxiety going up. It just, all that's tied to our mental health as a country. But they're not stopping here. You also, I can't not talk to you about foreign affairs. And you're on the Foreign Affairs Committee. Have been for a long time. Longest serving Indian American in Congress. It's remarkable. The USAID thing shocked a lot of us. I'm a combat veteran. I worked with USAID downrange in Iraq to build things. We worked together to build chicken coops. For villagers who are, being tested by ISIS. It's shocking to see now that international health is going to be affected by this, isn't it? And international health doesn't stay international for long, does it? Right? Like the oops on Ebola. Right, it eventually comes to bite us in the ass, doesn't it? Are you shocked by what they're doing and how?
100%, right? We don't spend a lot of money on foreign aid. It's less than 1% of the federal budget. The public thinks it's 25%. It's really a small bucket. It's a reflection of our values as Americans. I want to believe we're a kind, humane, moral civilization, and we want to help people around the world. What this is going to do, it's going to erode our soft power influence. It's going to erode the good that we do around the world, and tens, hundreds of thousands of folks are probably going to die of starvation. They can't get their medications that we provided through PEPFAR for HIV/AIDS. And the thing that bothers me the most is how they're treating a lot of these employees who are, they're patriots. They're folks that work in war zones and refugee camps. A lot of them are veterans, folks that represent the United States of America. And for a 22-year-old to sit there and say, okay, you've got 15 minutes to come clean out that is so disrespectful. I guess if I were one of those, I'd wanted to say F you. You don't treat people that way. I get if we want to look at program by program, look at the effectiveness, et cetera. But to have these tech bros come in and talk to someone who's served the country sometimes for decades, that is just shameful and disrespectful. And I think they ought to be embarrassed about it.
And there's so much shamefulness, right? There's so much that we should be ashamed of. I joined the Army. I'm dating myself, sir. 1983. I went to West Point under President Reagan. The great city in the hill kind of thing. I believed in the. I can never forget the iconic words. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall, and then to sit in front of my computer and watch us vote with Russia this week in the UN on the anniversary of the war in Ukraine. It's got to be shocking, for someone like you too. Where are we right now when we're siding with Russia?
That vote at the UN was embarrassing. Right? It goes against everything that we stand for freedom, democracy, rule of law, human rights. Every veteran, and again, thank you for your service to our country, but we should be embarrassed as a nation. Now, I get, let's try to find a peaceful end to this conflict in Ukraine, but Vladimir Zelensky did not start this war. Putin started this war unprovoked, and this is a war of aggression. We shouldn't be heaping praise on Putin and scorn on the Ukrainians. They've demonstrated courage. They're fighting for their country. They're fighting for their future. And, again, I think it's been pretty embarrassing and pretty shameful as an American.
Yeah, a true existential threat to their existence as a nation, and here we've got people just flirting that away after all these years of support. The one thing I always ask a lot of, and it's a tough question I think sometimes, but you guys are getting beat up. I can't imagine how many phone calls even in California you're getting on your. I've got friends who are staffers on the Hill. It's like, yeah, it's really noisy here in our office. A lot of people feel like we should be doing more. They're beating up Republicans, but they're also beating up our Democratic electeds like yourself. How do you answer that criticism? That the Democratic leadership's not doing enough. You're not fighting. I mean, I'm curious to how you'd answer that. This is the chance to kind of talk to our viewers.
Absolutely. So we are getting a lot of calls, and I think a lot of my colleagues are getting calls, and I think we should expect that, right? I think a lot of folks are scared, and it's not just Democrats that are calling our office. I mean, a lot of moderates, independents, some Republicans, just the pace and sheer speed of what the Trump administration, what Elon Musk is doing, and they're worried about the future of American democracy. So, we are fighting back where we can. I mean, I'm not locking myself to the doors of the Treasury because that's probably not going to be effective. We're fighting.
No, though.
I don't know if that's going to change anything.
It's a great visual.
The courts are actually siding with us. That's not exciting, but that's the one tool that we have to point out how unconstitutional this is, how illegal this is. And it is illegal, a lot of what he's doing. We've also got to speak directly to the public as we are right now and point out, how dangerous what they're doing is. We're going to have a viral outbreak somewhere. We just talked about measles. Taking apart our ability to predict the weather, that's going to lead to catastrophe. Dismantling the FBI, I worry about domestic terror. So we've got to speak to all of these things. That's the stuff that Donald Trump and Elon are doing right now. So when it does happen, I hope it doesn't happen, but inevitably something bad is going to happen. And hopefully that's when the public and the courts and everyone.
Yeah, I agree. So we froze briefly there, but yeah, I agree. Finally, I'll let you go. I know this is an official capacity, but I understand you did just take over the Frontline program for Democrats as we get close. We're focusing on these tough races. I mean, it's going to be a fight this year, right? These competitive seats are up for grabs.
Yeah, this is going to be a competitive election cycle. The playing field is pretty narrow, but at the end of the day, the one thing we know we can do is, and the most important thing we can do is get the majority in the House of Representatives. We saw what we did in 2018, and that gave us the ability to put a check on Trump. And for those activists and everyone else out there, the best thing we can do right now is to focus on winning in 2026, getting the majority, and that'll allow us to actually subpoena folks. It led to Trump's first impeachment that first time around. I'm not saying we're going to do a third impeachment, but you know what? Who knows?
Inevitable. I mean, he's breaking a whole shitload of laws,
Exactly. But that is the best thing we can do. So it starts with protecting our vulnerable incumbents, but it also then we've only got to pick up 3 seats. So this is going to be incredibly close. There are special elections coming up as well. They're not in friendly terrain for Democrats, but we're going to go for it.
Yep. There's a lot of angry people right now. Well, sir, thank you so much. I know you're busy today and appreciate your time. Keep up the fight, I guess. We appreciate you taking your time for us. Good luck up there and keep up the good work.
Absolutely. Fred, thank you for having me on. Don't give up on America. Keep the faith, keep the fight. It's who we are as a country. Be well.
But it is way too long to give up now. I'm too stubborn. Yeah, I am too stubborn. As you can see, it's always interesting. For those who didn't see, there was someone who decided to threaten me on Twitter. That's what the time we face right now. As you guys know, I faced a $150 million lawsuit from Mike Flynn. People like Alex have lies being told about them, or even that if you saw the portion of my conversation with Alex over the weekend, a MAGA account actually put out that Alex and some other people, some famous, people who from the Obama administration actually prepped Zelensky while he was flying over. They literally said, "I'm speculating." From saying "I'm speculating," which means they made it up, it went through all the different MAGA ecosphere to now the DC attorney, the federal attorney in DC is saying no one's above the law. So by Monday, we'll probably have an investigation of something that never even happened, that was completely made up on Twitter. And that's the kind of minute we face here. And those who you saw today on the show are very clear that we're going to have to stand up to this. It's going to take people like you who joined this show, all several thousand of you, thank you, and others to stand up to all this and not take it, right? And not be afraid by these folks. They want us to be terrified. It's just not who we are. They want us to be dour and miserable and depressed and terrified. It's not who we are. We're going to laugh at them. We're going to laugh about this because that's all we can do. Because bullies and hate nothing more than being laughed at or mocked. And I will not stop mocking bullies. So having said all that, we were going to take time to answer the questions, but as you can see, we ran a little long right now as we were trying to have great conversations with both Simon and Alex and others. I would love next week for those who are regular. There's so many regulars. Vern, I can't believe how many great folks we have here that are joining us. Yvonne, I see you every week. Next week, let's come on. We're going to try and we'll carve time out at the end of next week's show. I'd love for you to ask questions. We could do some questions next week. Last 15 minutes of show. I'll make sure we're on time to take a few questions you have. So be sure to come next week. You can throw some questions in the chat. My team, Katie and JJ, will catch your questions and we'll answer a few questions about what you think, what you have of me, what you'd like to hear from me, and more from the show. Again, Q&A live next Sunday. We'd love to have you join us. Please start spreading the word. We're growing our audience every week. I'd love to grow it more. So spread the word if you can. Again, it's On Democracy Channel on YouTube is the main place to find us. Just click that subscribe button and your alert button. We'd love to have you join us where you can. You can always follow me on my social media channels at FPWellman. I'd appreciate it if you didn't threaten me there. That'd be great. If not, certainly great to talk to you guys. In the meantime, it's always a pleasure hanging out with you guys on Sunday. I look forward to it every week. This is one of the favorite times of the week, even as crazy as it is. And, it's just how it is. We have a lot of fun here. And sometimes it's crazy. Sometimes it's nuts. Sometimes Katie spends an hour talking to a guest. In the meantime, we appreciate you. We appreciate your support because it matters so much to all of us. It really does. So thank you, everybody. Please have a great week. Stay sane. It's a beautiful day where I live. Hopefully it's a beautiful day where you are. Get outside. Take a moment to enjoy this one because I'm telling you guys, it is not going to get better anytime soon. The only thing we can do is fight to maintain our sanity, fight to maintain the fight. Take a break when you need to. Take a pause. And if you have to take a pause, great. Take a knee. In the military, while we're on patrol, we would take a knee and just rest for a minute. Doesn't mean the mission's over, but everybody needs to take a knee every now and then, rest so you can get back up and get back in the fight. So with that, thank you to JJ, our producer. Winterwood Studios, of course, produces our show. Katie, who is my local producer, does amazing work. All of you who join us every week. We will see you again next week and in between where we can. This is On Democracy Channel. Thanks for joining us.